guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about how to navigate some of the risks associated with using AI in your business, and specifically we're going to be talking about a recent case that happened with Air Canada and their customer support chatbot. So we're going to go over what that case is and what happened, what are some things that they could have done to mitigate the decisions on that case, and last but not least, the main takeaway that I took from reading this case as well. So let's get started. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Matt and I'm super passionate about creating AI solutions for businesses, especially on the sales and marketing side of things. And I just wanted to preface this video by saying that this video is not any legal advice. I just wanted to share my experience of reading this case that happened with Air Canada and some of the things I learned from it so you guys can learn from it as well. So I just wanted to give that quick disclaimer before we start going into what happened. So in November of 2022, Jake lost his grandmother and he wanted to find good tickets to go back home from Vancouver to Toronto to stay with family during these tough times. And there's a thing in the aviation industry called bereavement fares that are associated whenever you lose a close family member. So exactly the situation. So what happens is that Jake goes into Air Canada website and he finds a flight from Vancouver to Toronto, but he wants to know if he can apply for these bereavement fares, which essentially means that you get a better price on your ticket if you show the airline company that you have just lost a close family member and you're flying because of that reason. So he goes into Air Canada's website and he types into the chatbot asking if there are bereavement fares. And the chatbot says exactly this. Let's look over here on the computer. It says that Air Canada offers reduced bereavement fares if you need to travel because of an imminent death or a death in your immediate family. If you need to travel immediately or have already traveled and would like to submit your ticket for a reduced bereavement rate, kindly do so within 90 days of the date your ticket was issued by completing our ticket refund application form. So based on this information, Jake goes ahead, buys his flight to Toronto, flies to Toronto, stays there for a few days, and then buys another ticket to come back to Vancouver, both one-way tickets. And I believe that when he gets back, or when he's getting back in the process of getting back from Toronto to Vancouver, he applies for his first bereavement fare. And essentially, he's in communication with Air Canada, and they're telling him that no, he's not qualified to get this fare, to get this discount on his trip, because he's applying after the fact, after he already traveled, which contradicts exactly from what he saw on the chatbot. So this happened between November and February. He's trying to get his money back or get a discount on what he paid for with Air Canada between November, December, and February. I'm not sure if there was any communication in January. And I guess that one thing that he did before suing Air Canada, and I'm checking my screen over here, he did talk to their team, and Air Canada did admit that the chatbot gave misleading words and thanked him for the feedback and told him that they were going to update the information on the chatbot, but they never really gave him the discount that he was asking for. So that's one of the reasons why he decided to sue against Air Canada. He was expecting to get a certain discount. He didn't get it, paid a lot more for his flights than he should have, and now he's in quote unquote deep financial trouble, right? So then Air Canada gets sued, they go to court, and the judge decides that Air Canada is liable for that information and that they should have given Jake at least a discount for a value of $650. In fact, if we look over here on my screen, they say that he is owed by Air Canada $650.88 in damages, $36.14 in prejudgment interest, and $125 in CRT fees, which essentially means that the ruling is against Air Canada, right? They found that they were liable for that information to be accurate and to be correct, and that Jake was not wrong by doing this or by asking for a refund and asking for the bereavement fare after the fact because the chatbot told him that he could do that. So the issue here, and I'm going to cheat again on my computer, is did Air Canada negligently misrepresent the procedure for claiming bereavement fares? And if so, what is the remedy? So after I read this case, I wasn't like super surprised that that was the outcome that the judge found or the tribunal found. I'm not sure if I'm using the legal terminology here correctly because, well, the chatbot provided incorrect information. Air Canada tried to argue that they weren't liable for that information. It's obvious that that's not going to go too well. And apparently this happened because Air Canada owed Jake duty of care. And in the case, it talks about how Air Canada didn't really try to defend that that information was supposed to be accurate or that they had trained that chatbot enough for that information to be accurate. So it's kind of assumed, or it's understandable that the understanding there was that this was carelessness. They didn't provide enough evidence to show that this chatbot was trained properly, which brings me to the things that they could have done to avoid this outcome. So aside from reading the case itself, which is this one, I read it on Canly, you can find the link down below. I also read this article over here by Barry Suckman, who is a lawyer in these areas over here. And over here in this section, he gives some comments on the decision. And these comments actually were opened my eyes to a lot of things that Air Canada could have done to try to avoid this outcome. And out of the things that he mentions down here, he says that Air Canada might have tried to defend the case by explaining how the chatbot was trained and tested, and argued that while the message provided was inaccurate, it was not negligent. And there's two portions over here that I want to touch on. One, the documentation on the accuracy training that you have on your chatbot. And then two, the timeline of issues that Air Canada faced. First, let's go over the timeline, right? This happens in November of 2022. I don't think I even knew what ChatGPT was in November of 2022. The GPT models were out, and I believe you could build on the back of GPT models at that time. So I'm assuming that Air Canada trained this model on GPT 3.5, right? They created their chatbot, custom or not, using a platform like VoiceFlow or Dante or whatever it might be, or not. I'm assuming that they trained this on GPT 3.5. Now, GPT 3.5 has its issues on its own. It's not the best at retrieving information. It's really good. And when it came out, it was coming out with some crazy results, and everybody started seeing what it was possible to do with it. But compared to GPT 4.0, which is the GPT that we're at right now, GPT 3.5 is really bad, and just recently OpenAI released a new model that I personally haven't gotten a chance to look over. I'm not sure if it's going to make any difference in these scenarios. But what I'm trying to say with this whole context over here of timeline is that they were using the first model that was really popularized, that people really got a chance to test out. And this model wasn't great. 4.0 right now is not perfect, but is a hell of a lot better than GPT 3.5 was. So on that timeline front, it could have just been a technical issue, It wasn't portraying the correct information. It wasn't reading the correct information from that web page and then giving it to the user the way it should do. And this is probably, I'm assuming, an issue with their RAG system, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. It's just a system in the back end that these chatbots use to read information and then give back to the end user of, like, if they're reading a web page, a document, or whatever it might be. I'm not sure if that's the case. But anyways, to sum up what I was trying to say is that GPT 3.5, not the best model. You need a lot of really good prompt engineering to get that going. And then just use a better model if you want to decrease the risks. You're going to end up paying a little bit more per usage, but given that this is one of the risks, this is one way that you could decrease the risk. Unless you have like a professional working with you that has done a lot of prompt engineering and have built these chatbots in the past and knows how to make them really accurate using 3.5, use the better models. This would be my advice as someone who's been working with AI and trying to build things with AI. Now to the second point, the point that it says over here about explaining how the chatbot was trained and tested. This is something that I started to consider after I read this case about if you're building a chatbot, show all your steps that you're going through to ensure that this chatbot is coming out with good responses at the end of the day. I've seen other creators online, I'm not going to remember exactly who it was, on how they use this. They had like a whole system that had a credibility score almost, but it was like a really complex credibility score of how the ideal output of like a specific question was compared to the hundreds of outputs that chatbot created. So essentially what I'm trying to say is that you want to have responses with a really high credibility score, right? If you're building in VoiceFlow, for example, you'll see that your answers have credibility scores. If you look at your chat history, it always tells you like this chatbot was 70% confident, which is not a great score, or 99% confident that this answer that it provided was correct. So if you track those scores and if you track the training process that you go through, you have both that documentation internally if you want to create other chatbots or if you want to create different chatbots for different reasons. Like let's say you're creating one for internal purposes and now you're creating one for external purposes. You have the documentation to rely on to be able to build other ones as well. And not only to build other ones, but to have that in the back pocket in case anything goes wrong. So you can show, hey, look, this is what we did to make sure that the information was accurate. If it wasn't, sorry, we're not liable for it. Now, would it hold in court? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer and I can't say if it would or not. And as I said in the beginning, this is not legal advice, but this is how I would go about doing this if I was in Air Canada's case. Now, the second mitigation that we could use that was mentioned here is that Air Canada also did not appear to rely on any website terms and conditions that may have attempted to disclaim liability. And over here, he even says that it's well known that chatbots and AI systems, including generative AI systems, sometimes give inaccurate information. These hallucinations and the liability, therefore, are commonly disclaimed in terms of service. So this goes to show that if you are implementing a chatbot, just make sure that you have some sort of disclaimer in the beginning, and that might be a way that if your system does hallucinate and someone decides to sue you for it, well, we already covered the portion of like how do you prevent your system from hallucinating, which is the training portion, right? Making sure that your prompt engineering is good, that you're using good models. So if it still hallucinates, and it could, like being completely honest with you, if you did everything right, there's still like a very small percentage of chance that your system could still hallucinate. You have those liability terms. So this is more related to, I guess, the legal aspect of it, of how to make sure that if something wrong does happen, how you would, cover for yourself. And I'll actually show you how you can do this in one of your chatbots. So just playing around with Dante over here. And if you go over here and you're creating a chatbot, I have a video about create chatbots. So if you want to go over, just click over here on the card and you can watch that video on how you can use different platforms to build simple chatbots. Anyways, regardless of that, once you are in this stage of customizing your chatbot details, you have this option over here of disclaimer text, right? And I just wrote something really simple, like information may not be accurate. And then here it's where it popped up. So whenever someone is using your chatbot, this might be like a way for them to be like, okay, I know that this information might not be 100% accurate. If I'm going to rely on this information for big purchases or for whatever it might be, it would be better for me to reach out to whoever it might be. You can also edit this message over here of, hi, how can I help you, to add to some sort of like terms and services, or before this message pops up, you ask someone to agree to the terms and services before they use the chatbot. Those could be ways that show that someone has agreed to these terms and services and they're aware, which maybe possibly could, get rid of your liability in this scenario. As I said, not a lawyer. These are just ideas that I had while I read both the case and the commentary. But with that being said, let's go over to my main takeaway from this case, right? My main takeaway is that there are risks associated with using AI systems. I personally believe that there are a lot more benefits associated with AI systems. Now, in order to mitigate those risks and take advantage of these benefits, you need to, one, focus on your accuracy. So hire someone who knows how to build chatbots, and two, record all of your processes that you're using to ensure that this information is liable, or is accurate, not liable, sorry. And then three, if you're going to have any like legal, like covering yourself on the legal grounds, talk to a lawyer, include a disclaimer on your chatbot, and do, whatever he or she says that is the best way to go about covering for yourself and making sure that you're not liable in case your chatbot hallucinates. So on my side of things, I would focus on the first two, right? You need to make sure that your information is accurate by doing really good prompt engineering, by testing all of your processes, by having a good quality knowledge base. And then two, having those systems work and be tested over and over again to make sure that the answers that you're getting are the answers that you want your customers to see. So those were my main takeaways from this case. So as a final note, use AI, but use it properly. Make sure you're doing things the right way. And don't be discouraged by what happened with Air Canada. This is the first case that involves a chatbot in this scenario. And as we saw in the commentary, there are a lot of things that Air Canada could have done. They didn't provide a lot of explanation to why chatbots were a different legal entity to their own thing. They didn't explain how their chatbot was trained. There's a lot of different things that are still probably going to happen later down the line in the next couple of years that businesses will be able to show that they have done their due diligence and that they're working towards providing accurate answers to consumers. And I want to help you to do that as well. So if you are interested in building AI solutions for a business, you already know my email's down below. Shoot me an email. And honestly, don't try to build it for yourself. Contact someone who has been working with this for a while now and do the right thing. Just do the right thing.